Is it possible that a team like McLaren, dominant in 2024 and leading in 2025, would be completely surprised by the data on its own car? How can a leading driver lose almost 6/10 compared to his teammate in the same car? Today I am going to tell you the complete story of what McLaren discovered after the Mexican GP with Oscar Piastri. A history of errors, technical revelations, and perhaps a fracture in the team's internal trust. Oscar Piastri landed in Mexico not only as an established promise, but as a legitimate contender for the Formula One world title. He had led the general classification for 189 consecutive days since his great victory in Saudi Arabia, a mark that only the great champions have managed to sustain in the hybrid era. McLaren, with a car visibly stronger than the 2024 one, arrived at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodríguez with the momentum of a solid start to the season and an aerodynamic package that allowed them to dominate in most technical sectors. Everything pointed to this being another weekend of control and execution for the Papaya team. But instead of reaffirming his status, Mexico became a tactical and technical nightmare for the young Australian. From the first free sessions, the signs were worrying. While his teammate Lando Norris was quickly finding the rhythm and confidence to attack the curbs and exploit the limit of grip, Oscar seemed to be constantly one step behind. It was not a marginal difference. It was a total disconnection between pilot and machine. In qualifying, the difference became humiliating. Norris set a 1 minute and 15.586 seconds that placed him on pole, while Piastri could only be 8th, and that after being promoted to 7th due to the sanction to signs. The margin was 0.588 seconds. In modern Formula One, that's not just a gap. It is an abyss. It's the difference between competing and surviving. It was also the biggest difference between both McLaren drivers throughout the season, a fact that shocked the analysts and the team itself. And the most disconcerting thing, that difference did not appear suddenly. It was growing. In Q1, Oscar was 0.259 seconds behind Lando. In Q2 at 0.485. And in Q3, it shot up to almost 6/10. It was an unusual progression that could only be explained by a deeper structural disconnect, not a simple one-time failure. It wasn't that Piastri made mistakes. It was that I couldn't extract the performance of the car under any circumstances. And that, for a driver who weeks before led the World Championship, was devastating. What they found was deeply disturbing. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was not a damaged component. It was the car's own behavior that was sabotaging each of Piastri's fastest lap attempts. The MCL39, in its version optimized for Mexico, exhibited a pattern of instability in the rear axle that had not manifested itself with such severity in any other circuit on the calendar. In low grip conditions such as those at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodríguez, with its extreme altitude and low grip asphalt, the car reacted with extreme sensitivity to vertical loads and weight distribution. At each corner entry, Oscar's car oscillated between traction and oversteer, making its behavior unpredictable. Every small change in temperature, every difference in pressure in the tire, generated exaggerated reactions in the rear of the car. For a driver, that translates into a scenario where you can't trust the car to repeat what you did in the previous corner. It's like driving on ice, but without knowing when you will lose control. One of the most revealing points was the reading of the electronic differential. In slow corners, where the driver relies on the differential to help the car turn smoothly without losing traction, Piastri's MCL39 setup showed inconsistencies that were not present in Norris's. This generated constant losses of grip at corner exit, forcing Oscar to correct more than necessary, which in turn affected his entry into the next corner. It was a chain reaction invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to the rhythm. And it wasn't the only thing. During Q1, Oscar reported by radio an anomaly with the DRS. It did not activate correctly on his first timed attempt. That return, which should have been his letter of introduction in the session, was ruined. On a circuit like Mexico, where the main straight is one of the longest on the calendar, losing DRS means giving away key tenths. 7, to be exact, was the estimated loss in that area alone. In Q2, a new complication. Oscar felt an abnormal response in the power unit when exiting turn 5. Sensor measurements showed that his top speed at that point was 10 km per hour lower than Lando's, for no apparent reason. Although the engineers did not find structural failures, they did detect erratic behavior in power delivery, possibly derived from the calibration of the engine map for altitude conditions, something that usually requires specific adjustments. Once again, Oscar was fighting a car that just wasn't behaving the way it should. The comparison of telemetry between both pilots confirmed the nightmare. While Lando could maintain consistent corner entry and exit speeds, Oscar had to correct, lift, and reorient his line on virtually every slow corner. The accumulated loss was not only due to absolute time, but also due to a complete disconnection between car and driver. A situation that, in Formula One, is the equivalent of going to war with a gun that doesn't shoot. At McLaren, the impact was total. It wasn't a piloting problem. It wasn't lack of concentration. It was a design that behaved critically under specific conditions and required a driving style that was precise to the millimeter. Lando had found it. Oscar no. But the question that began to circulate in the paddock was even more uncomfortable. Had the MCL39 been subconsciously optimized around Norris's style? What if Piastri simply didn't fit this new version of the car? With that scenario, the Mexican GP stopped being just a bad race. It became a full diagnosis of a McLaren technical vulnerability. What happened with Oscar Piastri in Mexico was a direct consequence of that characteristic. The Autódromo Hermanos Rodríguez, with its altitude of more than 2,200 meters, presents a unique challenge. The density of the air is reduced, affecting both aerodynamics and the behavior of the tires and cooling systems. For the MCL39, a car built with airflow-sensitive aerodynamics, this meant a critical loss of rear stability, especially in load transfer phases. The rear downforce was not generated with the same efficiency, which caused erratic behavior during braking and acceleration. In that context, the pilot's ability to adapt becomes crucial. And this is where you begin to see the gap between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Norris, with more years of experience in the team and having worked directly in the development of both generations of the car, knew how to adjust his driving style to maintain the stability of the car within its operating window. He adjusted the angle of entry, modulated the load on the brake, worked with the engine maps and the electronic differential to keep the car in a safe zone. He wasn't faster by nature. It was more adaptive. Oscar, on the other hand, was trapped in a spiral of technical insecurity. His style, based on a more aggressive, more direct cornering, clashed head-on with the technical demands of the car in low-grip conditions. The lack of traction, the unpredictable reactions of the rear axle, and the lag in the DRS system created an environment in which he could not find confidence. And without trust, there is no speed. This led to an awkward conversation within the team. Is the car unconsciously being developed around Norris's style? It wouldn't be the first time it happens. Internally, McLaren also began to rethink its development approach. During the first part of the season, Lando's feedback had been dominant in the technical direction of the car, partly because of his experience and partly because his results supported it. But Mexico showed that a car can be excellent at data, and still fail if it doesn't allow both drivers to operate freely. From there, Stella instructed the team to more actively integrate Oscar's sensations into the aerodynamic evolution and load balance maps. But beyond the technical, the real test was emotional. A driver beaten in confidence is an asset at risk. And in Formula One, confidence is as important as grip. For this reason, in the meetings after the GP, McLaren put aside the coldness of the numbers and opted for transparency. They spoke clearly. All the data was shown to Piastri, configuration errors were recognized, and a new roadmap was built to prevent the situation from happening again. However, not everything is harmony. In the paddock, rumors began to arise. Some analysts suggest that the car could have been developed with an unintentional bias toward Norris styling. Others believe that McLaren took too long to detect the problem, and that the consequences could be widespread if a quick fix is not achieved. Be that as it may, Mexico was a turning point. A race that changed the team's internal narrative and forced them to reevaluate their vision of what it really means to build a championship car. Now, with demanding circuits such as Interlagos, Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi on the horizon, McLaren faces a key decision. So now the question falls on you. After everything we have seen, after everything the McLaren team discovered, are we really facing a circumstantial problem? Or have we witnessed the first major crack in the structure of one of the most solid projects in modern Formula One? Oscar Piastri did not lose in Mexico due to lack of talent. He lost due to lack of connection with a machine that, in the wrong hands or simply not perfectly adapted, can become a monumental challenge. Do you think the MCL39 is simply a car with character that demands more precision than the rest? Or do you think McLaren has made the classic mistake of building a machine that is too extreme, which only favors a specific driving style? Leave it to me in the comments. I want to know what you think. Should McLaren redesign the car to make it more versatile or continue betting on the configuration that gives it victories with Norris?